Hey guys, so welcome back, and in today's video let's talk about the map function in JavaScript. So let's get started. So what is the map function in JavaScript? So the map function is a high order function in JavaScript. Let me rearrange this. So the map function is a high order function in JavaScript. So, and by this it means that this function accepts another function as an argument in it. So if you have a function, let's say you have a function create me, then it gets a function, let's call it callback, then returns callback and then pass. So this is a high order function because it receives a function as an argument and then we can use that function inside. So let's continue. So the map function's main role is to modify an existing array, but it doesn't modify directly. It is used to change and create a new array. So whenever you're working in the map function, it does not mutate the existing array. It just creates a new array with the modified data. So most of the time you use it to change values or to basically to modify the array, but it doesn't change the existing array. It creates its own new array. So let's talk about the syntax. The syntax for the map function is as follows. So we have let me use an empty array dot map. So the map function is only available on the arrays in JavaScript. So you can't use it elsewhere. You have to use it in an array. So, and then what it receives a callback function. And then it receives another argument. So let me just write callback. So let me use CLB. Hey, what's wrong with this? So it receives a callback and then another argument called this value. So the map function receives only two arguments. So the callback function and the this value. So this value is not commonly used. So even in my case, I have not used that value. So this value is a value passed to the function to be used as the this value inside that function. So we said this callback function that is passed as the first argument to the map function, whenever you pass this second argument is used as the this keyword inside that function. But this is not commonly used, so we are not going to focus on this, but I just wanted to let you know that it exists. We're just going to focus on this callback. So this callback as well receives some few arguments. So we have two main arguments and one optional. We have one required argument and two optional arguments. So the first argument that it receives is the current item. The next argument it receives is the index of the current item. And the third argument it receives is the array it is working on. So this is the syntax. And to notice that this callback function, you can write it inline inside the map function. You can create an arrow function inline like that, and then it will still receive the same. So current item, you have the current item, the index, and the array itself that it is working on. So you can use this syntax whereby you write the callback function inline, or you can create it outside and then reference it inside the map function. So this is all a matter of preference. So let's get started with working with the map function. We have seen about the syntax and we have seen about what gets into that. So the first task we are going to deal with, we have these scores. So these are the scores maybe for a test, a student's test, and we need to modify these scores such that you multiply them by 2. So we want a result whereby we get 30 times 2 is 60, 40, then 40 times 2 it's 80, and then 66, and then 64. So we want such a result from this array here called scores. So how do we go about that? Let's use the old method. So the old method, we start with creating an empty array. So we can say modified scores is equals to an empty array. And then we use a for loop to loop over the scores. So we say for, we can use the for of, or we can use the normal for. We can even use the for each. So let's use the normal for loop. So for let I is equals to 0, wherever I is less than scores dot length, and then I plus plus. So that's the syntax. And then what we do here is that we want to push the modified item. So currently we only have the index because we are looping over the range of the indices of the scores. So during the first, let me just console log. So console.log I. So if I do that, and then we do that, we can see I is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this corresponds to the indices of the items in the array. So we have indices 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So by looping over I is equals to 0, we start at the first index, which is 0, and then going all the way to scores.length. So scores.length does not consider 0-based indexing. So scores length will count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the reason we do whenever I is less than the scores.length, so that we don't include the last digit, which would be 4, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would be 5, but we don't have an item in index 5. So that's why we use the less than and not the less than or equals to. And then we I plus plus. So when you console log I, we get the current, the indices of those scores. So to get the item, we can use array indexing. So we can say console.log. So we call the scores and then pass it the index. So the index happens to be the index of this item. So if we run that, you're going to get each item in each iteration. So you can see 30, 20 like that. So our task is to double this index by 2. We multiply by 2. And then if we run this, you can see it works as we expect. So this one is 64. 64 times 2 is 128. So we have the items multiplied by 2. So how do we add them to the new array that we created here? So it's very simple. So instead of console logging, we can say scores.push, and then we push to that array. We push the scores that have been modified. So let's see. Yeah, we push the scores that has been modified. So, and then finally we can console.log modified scores. So if we run this, so we have an error. So let's see. So array dot so scores dot push scores of I. So there's an issue. Let's see. Okay, so there's still an issue. Let's see what issue it is. So scores. Now we don't have scores. We can't push into the scores. We're going to push into the modified scores, and then we push the, let's multiply by our 2 here. So if you run that, you can see now we get our result. So how the for loop works is that it runs on each iteration. So iteration 1, I is 0, and then we go to the condition. The condition is I less than scores.length. You check the length of the scores, which is 5. Yes, 0 is less than 5. And then we come here inside. So in the first iteration, I is equals to 0. And then we come here. We are getting the scores of I. Scores of I is 30. So that's 30. And then we multiply that times 2. And then we get 60. And then before going to the second iteration, we now increment I. I was 0. I becomes 1. And then now the loop comes. So I is now 1. and then it checks whether I is less than the length. The length, which is 5, is true. It now continues with that cycle. I'm not going through the for loop. Just wanted anyone who maybe doesn't understand how the for loop works can understand. So this is how you do it. So this is very cumbersome. It's a lot of code. So that's why we have the map function. So let me show you how we do it with the map function. We say that the map function acts on an array. So we can say mapped scores. So we can call it map scores. The map function works on an existing array. So we need to work on the scores. So we call the scores and then we map over the scores. So we said we can write the callback function inline or outside. So how are we going to do this? We are going to do it inline. We said it receives 3 arguments. The first argument is the current value, and we can give it any name. So the current value, we can call it score because it's a single score. This function, let me finish writing the function. So this function you are seeing here is called a callback function, is run on each item on the array. So during the first iteration, this function is run on the first item. Then after that, it goes to the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So it receives the first argument is the current. Let me just do like this. All right. So the first argument is the current item. The next argument is the index of that item. So if you are looping over the item, which is 30, so the score will be 30, and the index of that item will be 0. And then finally we get the array. It also provides us with the array that this map function is acting on, which now corresponds to the score. But if we don't need all these arguments, the only argument that is required is the first argument. So that's what we are going to deal with. And then what we return from this is what will be the new value for that item. So we are going to return the score times 2. If I console log, that log mapped scores, and then you do run this, you can see we get 2 identical results. So that's how you work with the map function. And then to modify, if the map function only does one task, we can use the arrow function as follows. So we can remove the return, and then we are left with that. So this is an arrow function, one-liner arrow function, which has just an implicit return. It just returns automatically. This is how you can write it, which gives us the same result as previously. So on the next use case, we are not going to do the for loop version. We're just going to do straight the map version. So the next one is to transform a user's name to uppercase. So let me create some users. So const users is equals to an array of objects, and then the name. Let's start with John, and then age is 23. And then let's copy this down 3 times or 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then this one will be Susan. And then this one will be 25 years, 35. This one will be 50. This one is Abraham. And then this one will be Joyce, which will be around 19. So we have an array of users. So we want to modify this array such that we get a new array with all these names uppercased. So this is the task. So if you can try this task before then you can go ahead and do it. So what we are going to do is we are going to use the map function. So we can say const new users is equals to users dot map. Let's do this. And then for each user, we don't even need to do more. We just need the initial, you don't even need the index. So we are going to return user dot, you're going to return a new object with everything in the user, and then we modify the name to be name user dot name dot to uppercase. So let me remove this. And then guys, if you run this console.log new users, you can get the new users now have been uppercased. And that's it guys. That's how you work with the map function. You can map anything and modify whatever you want. So you can see in my scenario, this one is called the spread operator. And then so this spread operator spreads the items. It spreads in every item here, and then it will spread this item like copying. It will copy this here. So it will basically copy like name is equals to user.name, age is equals to user.age. You can see now. Then if you do this, something you'll realize is we still get the same result, is that when working with an object, when returning a new object, this argument will override this argument, or this value. This key value will be overwritten by this. So that's how the spread operator works. So, and then you can see the reason I used these curly brackets, because I wanted to return immediately. You don't have to do that. Let me just show you another way. So users.map, for each user, we don't care about the index. We can now open the curly brackets. You can see now this one is different from the one I created, which had curly bracket, the parentheses overlapping the whole object. But now I need to return now, because now this one is a block of code. We need to return from it. So I'm just going to return a new object. We can do it the way I did it, whereby I said name is equals to user.name, age is equals to user.age, and then the new name will be user.name.true uppercase. But instead of doing this, you can use the spread operator to spread all the other arguments, and then you don't need to care about the new argument. So you can do it this way, or you can use the return, whereby you wrap these in curly brackets, which now will return that object. And then this one gives us the same result. So that's it guys. That's how we work with the map function. You can do more exercises. You can do an exercise whereby you change the age, you increment the age. Let's do it. So instead of working the name, we can say age, and then you can get user.age plus 1. Just add 1 to each user's age. And then if you do run this, you can see now this one is 24, 36, 51. And so the point to note is that the map function receives a callback function, and the callback function's first argument is the current item. So during the first iteration, it will receive this user. So this one, it will receive a single user, which is this user. And then inside this, the code block, you can see now we are able to access user.age, because we are dealing with if you want the age, this is an object, we need to act on the user.age. So it happens that to the other item. And then this one forms the basis for working with React, because React uses this concept too much. We use this concept in React a lot of times. So whenever you understand this, on the upcoming tutorials on React, it will be very, very easy for you to deal with it. So that's it guys. Make sure you like and you follow for more tutorials.